and welcome back to A Chapter a Day.
Keeps the devil away.
I'm Pastor Pluck, along with Pastor Holland. We're talking Mark chapter 8. We're going to outline it. We're going to find some observation, some interpretation, and then finally make some application that we can put into our daily life. Here we go. So Mark chapter 8, verses 1 through 10 is the feeding of the 4,000. Large crowd gathers, nothing to eat. Jesus feeds them all with just a few loaves of bread and some fish. Then, immediately after that, the Pharisees demand a sign. They want to see Jesus do some magic tricks. In Mark 8, 11 through 13, he says, ain't going to do that. Then Mark 8, 14 through 21, the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod that Jesus warns his disciples about, and they don't get it. Then Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida at Mark 8, 22 through 26. Peter confesses Jesus as the Christ in 27 through 30. Jesus then foretells his death and resurrection, verses 31 through 33. And then, of course, that's when that doesn't sit well with Peter, and he rebukes him, "Get behind me, Satan." Then Jesus gives this direction to his crowd and disciples: if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. That's verses 34 through 38. All right, now let's talk about some observations about this text.
Man, the last verse just stands out to me.
What is it?
Whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes. That just stands out to me as like, man, I feel like there are so many who are ashamed of Jesus and his words and unwilling to speak up or afraid to kind of voice agreement with Jesus. Like that's just a weighty verse, I think.
Yeah, that is weighty. Okay. What do you think? I think for me, it's interesting that usually Jesus doesn't, he repeats miracles. He probably healed several different blind people, as we see here. But the feeding of the 5,000 and then followed up by another feeding of the 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that all about? And I love how it kind of reminds me of an Old Testament when I think Elisha goes to a woman. She's about to die. And he says, hey, do you have a jar of oil? He's like, this is all I'm going to pour it out. He says, don't do it. Here, get all a bunch of jars and keep pouring into other jars, and you're going to have food left over. And you'll be able to sell it and then live off, or you'll be able to eat and then live for the rest of your lives off the rest, which I thought was wild.
Yeah.
Jesus has compassion on people like that. I really appreciate that. And that's out of compassion is why he sees them and wants to do something for them.
Yeah. 2 Kings 4, also, Elisha feeds 100 men with 20 loaves.
That's right.
And then you get Jesus feeding 5,000 and then 4,000.
Right.
And so, the multiplication of loaves to feed hungry people, Jesus essentially shows like, man, you've heard of Elisha. Let me show you, how much greater I am.
Yeah.
And so he shows himself as a, far more powerful.
And I think he did that for the sons of the prophets, right?
Yeah.
Which were like, these are the righteous, holy people. Here, Jesus does it for the masses.
Yeah.
Which I thought was sort of wild. Okay, good. How about, here's something that might be confusing. Leaven of Pharisees and leaven of Herod. What exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's funny because it comes right after them, forgetting to bring bread again. And so this is like a repeat, not only a repeat miracle, but a repeat, like, he's giving them another chance. When I say leaven, I'm not talking about the bread, And so leaven is something, that starts small and spreads throughout the whole thing, right? And so the leaven of the Pharisees, he's addressed before that their lips professed
hypocrisy,
faith, but their hearts were far from him. So hypocrisy, yeah.
Legalism, maybe. What would be the leaven of Herod then? Would that be like licentiousness?
Herod, yeah. So Herod seemed to, you remember the situation it brought up with Herod earlier was him and John the Baptist, right?
Sleeping with his brother, or just taking his brother's wife, which is, think about how that would end up at Christmas. Like, everyone comes together and you're like, hey, sorry, Philip, I took your wife. And I changed her name. Her name's now Herodias. She's mine.
Yeah, and he, was essentially kind of using his power, authority, role to protect himself. And he was willing to hear John the Baptist, but not really obey him. So I don't, the leaven of Herod could be more of the latter thing of like, hey, you like to hear,
you don't like to do,
but you don't like to obey and put it into practice. Be careful that you don't become like Herod, who, listened to John the Baptist and enjoyed what he had to say, but didn't actually obey.
I love that. John 14:21, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me, he'll be loved by my Father. I will love him and manifest myself to him. I think there's this real reality, like we need to obey Jesus. Okay, that's good. What else? What observations did you make here?
You have Peter making the right confession,
Right.
and then being
application.
rebuked as Satan right after it, right?
Because clearly God's talking to you, but so is Satan. That is what. That is such a. This is why I love Peter. He's like a lot of us. In one moment, we are killing it. Like clearly, the Father in heaven is revealing truth to us. In the next moment, we are trying to stop Jesus from fulfilling the plan that might save us.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one that I thought, this is one that I quote all the time. From Matthew, we read, Jesus said, Matthew 11:20, come to me, all you who are weary, heavy laden, I will give you rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Okay. And then here, you got, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Anyone who, loses his life for my sake will keep it. Whoever keeps his life will lose it. Like, what a wild shift. That doesn't sound comfortable. It doesn't sound like easy. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. That sounds nothing like that. So what is that shift there?
Yeah, well, I think these things are not contradicting each other. Right? We know Jesus isn't schizophrenic, crazy man
Right.
who's just saying,
he's not like Peter, right? Yeah.
When Jesus says, come to me if you're weary, and I'll give you rest, that's not in opposition to take up your cross,
Right,
and deny yourself and follow me. Rest is actually found by denying yourself and following Jesus.
love it.
That, he says, whoever would save his life will lose it. The idea of trying to preserve your life and live for yourself is actually
exhausting.
what is exhausting. But if you would lose your life, if you would say, Lord Jesus, you're in charge, I'm going to follow you, there is a loss that happens there, but it's more like a shedding of weight. It's a loss of things that were exhausting you, that were weighing you down, that were not actually giving you rest. Whereas the sacrifices that you make to follow Jesus will bring peace and life into you.
And I think that's why he then says, for what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?
Yeah.
What can a man give in return
There's
for his
no
soul?
rest found in the world.
That there is no matter how much comfort you have, you actually doing God's will, taking up his cross and taking up your cross and following Jesus is actually more comfortable than living in the luxury of the world, because ultimately your soul will have rest with Jesus. It will not have rest in the world. Okay.
Yeah, the opening phrase from Augustine's Confessions.
Yeah.
It's, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. So you chase the world, and you're not gonna find rest. You give up your life to follow Jesus, whatever that costs you, and you actually do find rest and save your soul.
Okay. Let's get some truths about the nature of man. What do we got?
We are, what's the word? I'm thinking of Peter and him confessing Christ and then getting rebuked by Christ for, essentially he rebukes Christ.
Yeah. Like,
And then
we have a
gets
tendency to rebuke Jesus.
Yeah, to think we know better than God.
We know better than Jesus. Clearly, your way. I think of Forrest Frank's quote, "Your way is better." We can do the dance. Like that. When Jesus' way, he presents a way that seems not fun, and it didn't even involve Peter per se. It talks about Jesus' own death, burial, resurrection, but Peter just doesn't get that people will be singing songs for the rest of our lives, for the rest of humanity about what Jesus did on the cross, and we're not excited about it. We want to rebuke Jesus. No. We know better.
Yeah. So there we go. We think we know better than Jesus.
Okay, how about we forget God's past provision and we have a tendency to worry, like anxiety, and then totally miss what Jesus is saying. When you're so transfixed about on yourself and all your failures, even when Jesus gives you a word, don't listen to the leaven of Herod and the leaven of the Pharisees, you think you did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like that's where anxiety grips you. And even when you get a word from the Lord, you can't hear it because you're so self-focused.
That's good. I also think of the Pharisees seeking a sign, and just it's in our nature to want to, test God or prove it or show me a sign. And we're fascinated with, the signs and wonders rather than, they didn't believe the words he was saying. They just wanted to see something spectacular.
Yeah.
So there's something in us that wants to see a spectacular thing.
The simple is not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, then let's go to the, take up your cross, follow me. I think we want to save our own soul our own way. And so we want comfort, and we think that the way of comfort is here on earth, when actually the way of comfort is in heaven.
Yeah.
And we get there through a cross of some sort. That may not mean us being nailed to the cross, but if Jesus lived our benefit at his expense, how much more will he call his followers to live for the benefit of others at our expense, because we are not greater than our master. Okay, let's shift to, what about some truths about God?
He is a provider and a healer. He heals the blind man. He provides bread for the hungry. He's a provider and a healer.
I like he's compassionate. Like, I think the verse that really struck out to me is that he has compassion for the crowds. And I love that. And I have compassion on the crowd because they've been with me.
Yeah.
Now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And maybe this might be back to you being with, the more you're with Jesus, the more compassion he has for you. I don't know if that's true. I think, but the reality is he sees us all the time. It's just a matter of they're looking to him. And now they haven't thought about themselves, which I think is awesome. And now they've forgotten to be hungry, and now Jesus wants to meet their need. Isn't that amazing? When you aren't thinking about what shall we eat? Jesus' own preaching. Don't think, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? For the pagans, think about those things.
Yeah.
But your Father in heaven provides. He is literally living out the Sermon on the Mount right here, because they've had their eyes on him for 3 days, and he has compassion on them, and then wants to do a miracle for them in a powerful way because they've followed his teaching. How much more if this goes back to John 14:21. He who has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me and will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. This crowd focused on Jesus, and he rewarded them by providing for their needs in a really spectacular way that fed their body and their soul.
Yeah, that's good. God will say the true things, that we need to hear. He's willing to even wound us, or, when Jesus rebukes Peter, it says, turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, even rebuked him in front of the disciples, he's willing to say the hard truth that needs to be said, that, might be painful in the moment, but is ultimately going to be for your good.
So good.
So,
all right. How about this? Sin. So let's go back to our application. And, sin to avoid, promise to claim, example to follow, command to obey, knowledge to believe. How about example to follow? Simple. Peter's confession.
Yeah.
Just like, Jesus, you're the Christ. And then the example not to follow is don't tell Jesus what to do.
Yeah. And related to that, sin to avoid of don't be ashamed of Jesus and his words. In John, it says that some of the Pharisees were believing in him, but they were afraid to confess him as Lord for fear of being kicked out of the synagogue, and that they loved the praise that comes from man more than the praise that comes from God.
Love that.
And so always, it's so much better to be approved of and accepted by God and rejected by men than to try to gain the approval of men. And one day the Son of Man returns and is ashamed of you.
Man, so good. Final promise to claim. Whoever loses his life for Christ will ultimately save it, and you can take that to the bank.
Amen.
All right. We'll see you next time on A Chapter a Day.